Chapter 2. The Black Walnut Door. The main entrance door to the Anderson family mansion was made of heavy black walnut, solid wood, an antique bronze handle, a camera above the canopy. Such a house did not exude a sense of hospitality. It seemed to immediately remind everyone who entered that there were rules here. Leah White stood on the marble porch, her trembling hands buried in the pockets of her old cloak. A light rain settled on her hair and shoulders, soaking the fabric with chill. She could turn and leave. The thought had crossed her mind several times in the last 5 minutes, but then she would have to return to the workshop, alone with the dough, the calendar, and the memories that were making it hard to breathe. The door opened. The butler appeared in the doorway. His face remained calm and polite, but there was no curiosity in his gaze, just the habit of seeing people come to this house with requests, problems, or secrets. He stepped aside silently. It was warm inside. The air smelled of polished wood, fresh flowers, and expensive perfume. Leah couldn't help but notice there was nothing here to remind her that the family had lost their youngest son 40 days earlier. No photographs, no flowers in his memory, no traces of someone else's grief. The Andersons were as good at hiding their pain as they were at hiding their own family problems. "You're 10 minutes late," Mark's voice came from the living room. He stood by the large window overlooking the garden. He wore a dark suit, a perfect fit, but Leah immediately noticed what a stranger wouldn't have seen: the unbuttoned collar of his shirt and the fingers of his right hand, which constantly tapped against the glass. Mark was nervous, even if he himself would never admit it. Ruby Anderson sat by the fireplace. She held a porcelain cup of tea. She didn't look up when Leah appeared. "Buses from my area don't run very often," Leah said quietly. "You know that. I could have sent a car for you. I wanted to come myself." Mark looked at her. "Why?" Leah opened her mouth, but didn't immediately find an answer, because she was afraid to see his reaction, because she was afraid he would confirm her worst fears, because this wasn't a phone conversation, because things like that aren't said over text. She finally said. Ruby set her cup down on the saucer. The sound of the porcelain rang all too clearly in the quiet living room. "Mark, you have a call with your partners in Singapore in 20 minutes, she said calmly. "I don't think there's any point in wasting time." She looked at Leah for the first time. It wasn't an angry look. Worse, there was a cold, assessing calm in him. "Give her the money and settle the matter." Mark slowly turned his head. "Mom, what? Leave us?" Ruby raised her eyebrows slightly. "I want to understand what's going on in my family. Now I'm asking you to leave." They looked at each other for a few seconds. Mark and Ruby were similar. Both were used to being in control. Both disliked being refused. But today, Mark was the first to turn away. Ruby stood up. Before leaving, she looked at Leah again, not with hatred, more like cold disappointment. The door closed. Mark remained facing her. Only now did Leah see how tired he was. There were deep shadows under his eyes. His face seemed harder than usual. "Talk, Leah." She clenched her fingers. "I saw the doctor today." Mark said nothing. He only tensed slightly. "I'm pregnant." The room grew quiet, so much so that Leah heard the steady hum of the ventilation system in the ceiling. Mark looked at her for a few seconds. "How long?" 6 weeks. His gaze changed, just a little, but Leah noticed. 6 weeks? He repeated it quietly, as if trying to calculate something. "After the funeral?" Leah nodded. Yes, it hurt her to hear how calmly he said those words, as if he wasn't talking about the night that had changed them both. "It's your child, Mark." She tried to speak confidently. "I didn't come here for money. I don't want to demand anything. I just thought you should know." Mark walked over to the drinks table, poured water, but didn't drink it right away. "You came after a month and a half," he said. His voice was calm, too calm. "After David died, after my family went through the worst time in years, after the company lost some of its contracts." He set the glass on the table. "And you bring me this." Leah froze. "It's not this." Her voice grew quieter. "It's your child." Mark looked at her. "I don't know whose child it is." These words struck harder than if he had raised his voice. "What?" "Leah." He ran a hand over his face. For a second, he didn't look like a businessman or the heir to the Anderson family, just a man afraid to believe. "We broke up, but we were together." "Yes." He looked away. "That night after the funeral, we were both broken. You weren't able to think straight. Neither was I." Leah felt anger rising inside her. "You think I was with someone else?" "I don't know." Those 3 words were worse than an accusation. "I'm used to checking the facts, Leah." He looked at her. "And now the facts are against you." She was silent. "You're in debt for the workshop. You're having money problems. And you're coming here with the Anderson family's child. Leah retreated. She had expected a lot, but not this. Do you really think I'm capable of this? Mark didn't answer, and that was the answer. I was wrong to come. She turned around. Leah, but she was already heading for the exit. If you want to continue this conversation, Mark called after her, the lawyers will prepare the documents. She paused. What documents? A confidentiality agreement. Leah turned slowly. Of course. A bitter smile appeared on her face. I should have known. She opened the door. You can keep your money and papers, Mark. The door closed. Leah stepped out into the rain. She walked quickly, barely feeling the cold, and Mark remained in the living room. He didn't look after her. He stared at the glass of water on the table. A faint trace of her fingers remained on the glass. After a few seconds, he slowly pulled a clean handkerchief from his pocket. Carefully, he took the glass and wrapped it in the cloth. Ruby appeared in the doorway. She's gone. Yes, so what are you going to do? Mark looked at his watch. There were 4 minutes left until the call with Singapore. Nothing. He said this calmly, but his hand tightened on the handkerchief and the glass so tightly that his knuckles turned white, because for the first time in a long time, Mark Anderson was unsure of his own decision.